Candyman, a podcast where we're not talking about the movie Candyman, where star Tony Todd got stung by 26 bees. That is not a topic that we're going to be discussing at any point in this podcast. Instead, we're going to be talking about Sweet Tooth, the show on Netflix based on the comic by Jeff Lemire, specifically Season 2, Episode 1, In Captivity. And later on in the podcast, we're going to be reviewing a piece of candy. I am Alex.
I am Justin, and it is strange that it's 26 bees, because did they count them ahead of time or after? Like, when did they make that?
I got to be honest with you. I want to lay this out before Pete even introduces himself. I fudged this fact a little bit to like try to get through it. He was stung 26 times. I assumed since it was bees, it was 26 bees, but I guess I don't know. Maybe it was a super bee that stung him twice, and it was only like 25 or something.
Well, maybe bees were hanging out with some wasps.
But we're not talking about this. We're not talking about this. This is not a podcast about Candyman.
Aren't we?
No.
Season 2, we're retooling the podcast.
Excuse me. I'm Pete, and I just wanted to. Why aren't we eating the candy bars first?
Hold on. So to bring everybody back in, we are back for a second season.
Candy bars, delicious.
On Netflix. I'm so excited to talk about this. On every episode of the show, we do two things: we recap an episode of Sweet Tooth, and then we review a piece of candy. And then
is it we review a piece of candy and then also we talk about Sweet Tooth?
So this show's been gone for a year, and I think
wait, Alex, before you...
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I
was just going to say that Pete, I think, has refrained from eating candy for the past year. So really pent-up desire going on there. What were you going to say, Justin?
This is the podcast Pete's looking forward to the hardest. I have a feeling if we move the candy review to the beginning, Pete would be like, sorry, guys, I got to get out of here. No time to talk Sweet Tooth.
We do a bunch of different podcasts. And we always leave a little treat for Pete at the end. A little Pete treat, if you will.
Pete treat.
So the other thing to mention, though, we did this in the first season. It is time for the 2023 Syrup Cup, where we determine the best candy of all time. Very strangely, we all disagreed with this, I'm sure. Snickers won in the first season.
No, I called Snickers from the jump. I backed Snickers. Snickers was my guy the whole time. I knew it.
Milky Way won.
The showrunner came through, picked Snickers, and we took it all the way.
Yes, we did interview the showrunner, and he was the person who awarded the Syrup Cup in the first season. I guess we'll see what happens in the second season here, but we are beginning it. This episode, we're going to be talking about Butterfinger. Pete, at the end of the episode.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
First, we're going to talk about Sweet Tooth. I'm so excited the show is back now. Yes. I'm going to give you a little bit of recap of this episode, and spoiler warning up front. If you haven't seen it, go watch the episode. But brief bit of recap here. We're jumping right into it here. Gus, our little deer boy, has been captured by the last men who are led by General Abbott. He has been locked in a prison. They are being experimented on by Dr. Singh, who feels very bad about it, but is doing it anyway in order to save the life of his wife. They're trying to find a cure for the big sick, a sickness that decimated 98% of humanity. Hold on. You did this in the first season too.
I sure
Just
did.
Let me recap.
This goes with the recapping. It goes with the recapping. Okay, it goes with the recap.
After a year, Pete is now fine with the blinky pinky.
The wiggle pinky. We all have it. We got the
No, stop. I forgot what that was.
You thought we were just having some fun?
Yeah.
We were just like
Hold
Beyonce.
on, let me finish the recap, and if you have anything to add.
No, but that's what I'm saying. This is part of the recap. Since you guys are married, real quick, how many adorable children would you murder to keep your wives alive?
This is 100% definitely not part of the recap. That's part of the discussion of the episode, you son of a bitch. So the recap... Just to continue it, Gus meets a ton of other animal children that he bonds with. They are trying to escape from what is formerly the Essex County Zoo and hopefully get back to their parents. They don't know if Jeopard is alive. They don't know if Mom, aka Amy, is alive. We don't get to see them in this episode. But by the end of the episode, they get a little bit of hope that potentially Jeopard is alive, the big man. And we also get to see what's going on with Bear, a.k.a. Becky, who teams up with Judy and her flamethrower to take down a bunch of last men, escape from there, as Becky has now, building on the cliffhanger of the last season, connected with Birdie, who is Gus's mother, or rather the doctor who helped create him at the very least.
Quote, mother. She
is in Alaska, I believe we established, and she has discovered a strange ship under the ice that is filled with these purple flowers that keep showing up where the big sick is. So this big mystery is continuing here. But by the end of the episode, all of these elements are in play. The big thing that I want to say before we get to Pete's question, and Pete, I think this is a very good question for you to ask, but please, for the love of God, wait until after the recap, is how do you feel about the show being back? Because I'll tell you what, it was like putting on a warm blanket again.
Oh, wow.
I loved it.
Yeah, this show is great because, we get a lot of post-apocalyptic shows in our lives, especially these days. And this one is like nice. Niceness wins in this show. And you feel like the characters are kind, many of them, except for the bad guys. And the show is kind about its characters. And I really appreciate that. It reminds me of a show like Station 11 or another show where it really feels like like these people, they're in a bad situation, but they're good and we want to see them being good.
I also miss Fraggle Rock. You know what I mean? It's nice to be around some Muppets a little bit for long periods of time. It feels right.
I'm sorry, were you saying you miss Bobby?
Oh, no.
Bobby!
No.
Yeah. Oh, my God, I miss Bobby. I miss Bobby so much. A little twinge in my heart every time I saw that little guy. And we got so much Bobby this episode. We got so much animal children. It really did this is the stupidest way of saying this, but I watch a lot of TV. We all watch a lot of TV. We do a lot of entertainment and experience in it. Literal twinge in my heart, I could feel it twisting up at points when I was watching the show. And I do love that it just makes you feel cozy and it makes you feel earnestly for these characters, down to things like, maybe this was the first season. I honestly don't remember because I have not watched it since, but things when when the animal kids are talking about people, and instead of saying they died or they're dead, they're like, he's not with us anymore. He's gone. Yeah. There's a purposeful push, I think, on the part of the writing to make it this safe space for family to watch and interact with the show. So I think it's very rare.
So you're saying you get a cozy feeling when you're watching animal kids be tortured and experimented on.
They're in danger, but, I was actually talking to my kids who are currently 8 and 13 about the show earlier tonight because they're like, why are you buying all those Butterfingers, Dad? What's going on? Can we have
some?
Wait,
all those Butterfingers? Yeah. You only needed one. You only needed one.
I had to test a couple to see if I like them.
Test a couple?
You can't pre-taste the candy bar. You're worse than Pete. I was going to say Pete did a good job not interrupting your recap so he can have a candy bar at the end of the episode. But Alex, you've clearly already nibbled. You've been nibbling.
I haven't been nibbling. Pete is, if you're listening to the audio podcast, currently trying to gnaw through the wrapper. That's not going to
Oh, my God.
Like not some sort of hybrid.
Bobby would try to
hybrid child animal.
Please stop. Please stop doing the Bobby voice.
Let me be honest, the Bobby voice creeps me out, too.
We're talking about...
Bobby creeps you guys out?
Yes.
No, you do.
You doing the Bobby voice is the creepiest of all.
Well, let me ask you this. I know you get creeped out about my Bobby voice. Do you get creeped out when you find me burrowing under your lawn and then I pop out through that hole?
No, those are my favorite weekends. I just think that,
Alex is popping by.
Yeah, exactly. I just think it's, I could have done without the skunk fart joke, but other than that, I think everybody's adorable.
I didn't even mind that. I don't know. I don't like fart humor and I don't like poop humor, but it was so over the top that it worked for me, honestly.
Yeah, they're kids and they're also skunks. So, of course it's going to be a stink. Imagine how those kids
go the other way. Go the other way. Be smart.
I remember what I was going to say, and this is something that we talked a lot about in the first season, but in terms of the torturing and getting to see Chameleon Roy probably dead at this point in that tank.
I think
frozen in that capsule.
The answer to that is yes, by the way.
Sleeping very hard?
Yeah, he's definitely just sleeping.
Yeah, hard sleeping. That's a hard
taking
sleeping,
our long forever sleep.
And that's why all those people in the napping lawn, which is what
I was going to say before we started talking about Butterfingers is when I was describing to my kids, it's like a fairy tale. It's like a dark fairy tale is what it is. And they do a good job of channeling that, I think.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the animal kids. I wrote down all of their names, but we got Bobby, of course. We got Wendy, a.k.a. Pigtail, shows up again. She and Gus are the two main ones who can talk. Wendy has taught the other kids signs. Some of them talk to varying degrees. Definitely not as much as Gus and definitely not as much as Wendy. We got Jojo Raccoon. We got Haley. We got Junior, Anna and Hannah, Earl, Elephant Earl. Early favorite of the season, I think.
Oh, yeah.
The effects on Elephant Earl, phenomenal. I
Yeah.
was so impressed by like how tactile they made him look.
Well, and I think like since the kids are going to spend so much time stuck in this room, essentially, I feel like they did a great job of making that very lush and unique, and giving it different spaces for them to sort of hide in. And then they did such a good job with the characters themselves, making them look realistic. And I feel like
Do you know who
it.
played Earl?
That was Timothy Chalamet.
No, it
Timothy
was
Chalamet.
Babar.
Oh, he was. Oh, it
They
was an
got
actual.
Babar.
Wow,
Yeah,
They got
that's
Babar.
huge get, huge
that
get.
is a huge get.
Yeah, and
With the other characters, just to mention their names: Maya, Fun, Otto, Max, Teddy, and Roy, who doesn't make it through this episode.
yeah, he takes a big. But I mean, an interesting part for me is, or this episode felt like it was about Gus becoming a leader and sort of growing up in a way. Like he takes on their pain. He comes back when Roy's taken. He's like, yeah, he's fine. Roy's fine. He like tries to keep them safe from that sad fact that we're also protecting
Well,
Alex
let's
from.
talk about that moment. I mean, you're already talking about it, Justin, but he comes out and Wendy is about to tell them the truth that Roy has died. They've seen his dead body being carted away. And Gus instead has a little light bulb go off over his head and goes, "Oh no, he's fine. He escaped. Isn't that great?" In order to give them hope, of course, he's lying. Where what do you think about that? Because I think there's a lot of different things potentially you could take for that in terms of the lessons he's learned from Puba, the lessons he's learned from Jeopard, the lessons he's learned from other people. What do you think that means for Gus? Justin, I know you addressed that a little bit already.
Yeah, well, I think it's about him sort of becoming this leader, and by the end of the episode, he's fully like, I've run this room. Like we're gonna get out of here. He has a plan. He's given power by Singh, and his like birthright being sort of the pre-plague hybrid kid. So I think it's about that. But like a lot of animals get away. Like my family pets when I was growing up, they never died. They all escaped. So like it happens. It's a normal thing.
I'm sorry. Wait, all of your animals escaped? None of them died?
They would get old and be like 14, 15 years old, and then they would escape.
Right.
I don't know what they were escaping from because they
Interesting. We had a very different experience in my family where my brother was really obsessed with newts and he had a tank of newts and the newts would escape. And then like 5 years later, we'd find them in the air vents, totally dried out. We'd find terrifying and horrible.
My
You lived
wife's
in a hellscape of a home, it sounds
Pretty
like.
much.
let me throw one in on there. My wife's mom, when they were growing up, had a lot of animals like iguanas, and they would escape. And this is way upstate New York, and they later found the corpses of the animals like in different parts of the house, like giant iguana, a snake got out, and so animals are
That's creepy as fuck.
all over.
You know, the thing that I'll say about this, I thought that was a really interesting moment when Gus lied because most shows.
Yeah, I'd like to
Yeah, go ahead, Pete,
just
please.
jump in. Yeah, because it really felt like Gus, because she was going to shoot him straight, and he jumped in and kind of was like, I'm going to tell them what they want to hear and try to win them over a little bit. And I just think it was a weird move and very interesting. Just like, wait a second, do we trust Gus? Is he have some agenda? Like, what's going on? Like,
Well, let's
almost
remember
like
his.
he's being political about it, you know.
Well, but let's remember his background. Like he was not told the truth his whole
He
life.
was lied to, yeah.
And I
you're right.
think he's the part of the first season was learning like he found some value in that. He felt like it was actually served him because he had like a protected childhood and became sort of a person who wasn't terrified all the time. And I think he's applying some of that here, but I also think he's preparing them to rise up and escape themselves. If he's like, nah, Roy, dead. They're going to lose hope and not want to like band together and try and do something potentially, which it feels like is what we're leading toward this season.
Well, I think what we're talking about here is if the thrust of this whole show, and this certainly at least is part of what Jeff Lemire is doing in the comic book, is about Gus growing up. He's starting to understand this is why adults lie. This is why adults don't tell the truth about some things. And I think in this case, like you were saying, Justin, he's right to do it here,
Yeah.
and he does. Lying is not the right thing, but I think a less complicated show would immediately have Gus suffer in some way for having lied. But
Right.
here, ultimately, he steers them the right way and he pushes them in the right way. And then ultimately, even though he lied, he finds a better way of working with these animal children by taking the little pen flashlight from Dr. Singh and that beautiful moment where they say, "This little light of mine," and they have the light going and everything, which is
Yeah.
really wonderful. So he
I
finds his
like
own
the
way, but I think it's interesting to watch him experimenting with what he has learned from adults as he gets there.
speaking of sing-songy nice moments. I really like the Golden Girls moment.
I knew you would. I thought of you because you love the Golden Girls. So I knew you were going to be excited about that. What do you think about this new character, this new turtle character, Pete?
I
Well,
mean,
let's just be clear before we move on. Like Pete loves the Golden Girls. He like loves them. He's in love
Hmm.
with them. Each of them as separate women.
Yeah.
that's
Uh,
true.
and so like seeing that must have been. Of course, I thought the same thing.
Yeah. You've been building that time machine so you can travel back to Sicily 1918, right?
Oh yeah, definitely, no question about it.
Wow, that's a deep reference right there, my friend.
Yeah.
Perhaps too deep.
But I love that. And I love that joke too of having the turtle boy singing, "Thank you for being a friend," and then immediately following up with "Golden Girls," just to drive the joke home.
Yeah,
It's in the middle of all this darkness, there's still some very funny stuff going on.
yeah. The pinky swear is
Mhm.
adorable.
And Wendy is great in this episode too. I don't want to downplay her. I thought she
It's true.
did a great job here, sort of being the straight man to Gus and sort of laying out the whole situation. They work really well together. They're very
Yeah.
cute together. So fun stuff.
Are you saying you maybe see some sparks flying?
Well, not to get into any spoilers, but that's certainly the direction things start to go in the comic book, and I think they're probably going to go that way. Though they're very young at this point. They're both 10, I
Yeah.
think. So, well,
Yeah, a
he's
little
10
too
and
young.
she's 8 or
Yeah,
9 or something.
he's very clearly 10. That's a major
Yes.
plot point of the episode.
Let's talk about Singh because he has a big emotional arc this episode. What do you think about everything going on with him?
I mean,
It's rough.
it's rough, but I like how they put him they make his situation like you have sympathy for him. At the same time, he's doing monstrous things, but he's trapped. Like he
That's
loves
the
his
hard
wife.
part. Is yeah, it's hard the way they're leaning into this, where they're like, "Hey, listen, it's not so black and white here, all right? This is a man who is hanging on to hope of a life with his wife that he probably is not going to get. I mean, let's face it, and it's just heartbreaking. And then he's making like horrible decisions of like who lives and who dies here and this, and it's just like now all these people in a cage got to slowly watch everybody disappear and die. I mean, this is a brutal setup.
It is a brutal, but that's why I think it's so nice that when he finally cracks a little bit of the mystery of Gus, he's like, wait a second, we got something going here. He gives him the flashlight, like, and you see him looking at his wife later on at the end of the episode, thinking about how, oh God, I'm sure he's just sick to his stomach all the time. Like, if I can just figure this out with my brain, I can save my wife who is dying on the other side of this glass. It's heartbreaking. And so but like I said, they take care of their characters here. So you still feel for him, even though he
It's
is
like a Mr. Freeze kind of situation a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
classic Mr. Freeze.
that is a good call. It definitely feels like a Mr. Freeze thing. I was going to call out that I think there's two things that I was feeling going on with saying one on the more realistic end of the spectrum. You've kind of got Nazi scientist where he's like, I feel bad, but Goebbels has commanded me to experiment on you prisoners. That's certainly the darker, more realistic, more harrowing part of it. But on the other end of the spectrum, to go with this fairy tale thing, everybody has their own separate but interconnected fairy tales kind of going on. Like we've talked about the Gus and animal children thing, but Sing basically being like the giant or troll who has trapped these children and is like, give me what I want or I'm going to eat you.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
meanwhile, or if you want to talk about like a Beauty and the Beast type thing, like same sort of thing. Whatever it is, he's been cursed. He's been
Yeah.
cursed and he feels cursed and he has these things going on. And ultimately in those sort of tales, he ends up dying because he's the villain. But I don't know. They work this line very nicely between this is realistic and harrowing, if you think about it on that level, but it also works on the level of fairy tale, and it also works on the level of just enjoyable TV show.
So in this example, Singh is Beast, and his wife is like Mrs. Potts.
I guess I'm thinking
Beast,
about his wife.
Beast
like,
hooked up with Mrs. Potts.
I was thinking about his wife as like the flower, the rose that's like slowly falling apart.
That's right.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. It does.
No, it doesn't. But I like it. I like it. And in this scenario, we're all three dinner plates or something, right?
No, I think I'm more of a Cogsworth because the gears in my head aren't quite turning properly.
No, nice. That tracks. And I'm trying to hook up with a feather duster.
Yeah, that's for
right?
sure.
Yeah.
You guys, speaking of torture, you don't think it's too torturous to set out a piece of candy you've been waiting a long time to eat and then try to ignore the fact that there is a giant piece of candy in front of you and do a podcast talking about...
Let me throw this out, Pete. You're saying you're trying to ignore it? I hear you pick it up every 4 minutes. You keep picking it up and like cradling it or something.
That's the
Do
best.
you not have candy other than this podcast for real?
You're a grown-up. You can get candy anytime.
Yeah, but once you start eating candy, it's just really hard to stop. So it's like...
Once you start eating candy. That's right.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about me.
There's a lot more to talk about in this episode, though. We haven't even talked about Birdie necessarily yet. There's some big mythology stuff that's going on with her in Alaska in terms of the ship. She finds this old boat in the ice. There's purple flowers on the boat, including an enormous one, a journal. It says Dr. James Thacker, 1914, I believe. And then at the end, of course, she connects with Bear, a.k.a. Becky, as we see, and it reveals that there's a tape with a message for Gus. This is great. I really feel like they're going for it in a big way, and I'm glad they wouldn't really drag it out too long from that cliffhanger because that was such a huge revelation at the end of the last season.
Well, it's interesting that we had so many threads. Whoa. They had so many threads. Pete holding up a cassette tape.
Shout out
weirdly.
cassette tape. What? Cassette tape.
By the way, really quick, I like the joke where Becky didn't know what a cassette tape was, and she pulls out a record, and Judy's like, close. We're getting closer.
The way that
painful.
Like, the first season was all these different threads that didn't come together, and we were just sort of following them slowly, and then we saw them get close. And then it's just wild to me that this show did not do any sort of recap, and it just dropped us back into the same situation at the same moment. And then he's picking it up again. He's picking it up again.
It's not time, Pete.
Not time.
I'm hoping you guys would notice that.
It's
Come
crazy.
on, man. Let me just eat some.
It's crazy to me. I spend all day trying to get my kids to not eat candy and get on a podcast with my friends and have to be like, nope, don't eat that candy. Don't you eat that candy, Pete.
In terms of the recap, you feel like James Brolin, he did a good job. He was doing his like, the last men are the last men, and the first men are the first men, but the animal children are children, and now last men. Goodbye.
Do you think they should be like, you know what, we should start scripting those narration bits for Brolin? Because he's just mumbling, and he's just talking about, he hasn't even read the script.
100% they put a tape recorder next to his bed while he's sleeping, and while he's sleeping, he's just bubbling stuff in his dreams. He's like, the last men, oh, they're coming.
It's working.
Do my taxes.
I love how you're closing your eyes and really committing to that bit.
That's acting.
I'm channeling James Brolin right now.
Well, I like that James Brolin has really taken over the Sam Elliott role in movies of being like, oh, you want dusty old man on the range? I got it right here all day long. Beef. It's what's for dinner.
Well, one of my favorite revelations when we talked to the showrunner last season is like he's legitimately committed to doing this stuff, which I think is great. It's very cool.
You love it.
There you go. A couple of other things we should talk about in the episode. Let's talk about the big stuff with Becky that happens at the end. In particular, Pete, what'd you think about the scene? I know you were very suspicious of Judy last season, but she went out, taking out an entire battalion of last men with a frickin' flamethrower.
Yeah, that was glorious. It was a really badass kind of moment and a really fun thing for the show. Like it was, I liked the tension, but also the kind of fun of it. But it was just such a badass moment and very rewarding to watch.
I thought, again, like you talk about all the TV we watch, especially like shows where a character is trying to be badass. That was a badass move. Like the way she
Sure
just
was.
the gas tank turns on, you just see the thing and then she goes, should have knocked. And Blaze, I was like, yo, that's better than
what I
Punisher
loved
right
about
there.
that moment is the way that was written. It was like, not only you get this insane action movie line of should have knocked, and then she starts murdering people, and then it's immediately followed up with get off my property.
Yeah. That's her battle cry. Just like, oh my God.
For the next 10 minutes, you hear her continue to burn them. I was like, how is she sort of winning here? She's fighting off like 20 dudes.
Yeah.
And then Becky gets this intense fight sequence.
Yes. That was the one part that I actually felt like this is going to come up too strong, but almost went like a little too far just in terms of the violence of what's happening. It felt, after we had slow played everything the entire episode, to have her with claws on, you hear as she goes into this guy and kills him, they both fall off. It was a lot.
Yeah, the whole Pinky stuff is too much. They go hard on this. They go hard on this show.
I love the Pinky stuff.
Yeah,
it's
I love
scary.
Pinky stuff too, right?
It's just a little scary. For those listening,
wiggle.
Alex and I are both doing it, and Pete's looking away. He's just trying to look at his little candy bar.
Because he's picturing it in his head and he loves it.
Nobody better lay a pinky on my Butterfinky.
We're almost there, Pete. We're almost there.
Man.
First, we should talk about any other moments in the episode that jumped out to you in particular. Anything you want to call out? I'll say I thought it showed a remarkable amount of restraint to not have Jeopard and Amy in this episode. I really like that. Keeping it focused. I presume that they're going to come back. I was really surprised to see Dog come back towards the end. That was great.
I thought that was just a great way to do it. Like, we withhold them, so it gets scarier for Gus. It's scarier for us. It's like, how is he going to get out of here without the big man helping him out? Mom's gone. It's like the parents are away, and these kids have a real adventure and babysitting situation.
Oh, man.
But like the reveal at the end was great. Seeing Dog again. Very curious how Jeopard got Dog into the food. I guess we'll see. The kibble.
Yeah.
By the way, Pete, I forgot to mention to you, we're not trying Butterfinger this episode. We're trying kibble. Is the
That's
thing?
nope, that's not what I'm doing.
This podcast is called the Dog Food Boys. Now we eat dog food every week.
Nope.
So we got to make a leap. We got to make a leap from season 2. It's a little more extreme.
This is so bad.
this one's awful. This should be for dogs. This should be eaten by animals. Is what I say.
One other thing that we should talk about, though, before we move to the caddy review is Doug Abbott. We find out
that's what I was.
Abbott's
gonna say.
first aid. We get this whole scene where he wanders off, and we get, again, expanding the mythology of the world. We find out there's this group of 3 that it seems like Abbott is not part of. The last men are not part of, and they very specifically do not want him to be part of. We meet Dutch in the lowlands. Zhang, who is in Texas, is not coming, and there's the implication of a third person that just want nothing to do with him, even though he is trying very hard to find this cure. I thought this was interesting because this really flipped the power dynamic on Abbott and made me almost feel for him in a certain way.
Well, I didn't feel for. He's the one character I feel like the show's like you don't have to feel bad for him, but I also think it helps. He's so unhinged and weird. He's like Christopher Lloyd and Roger Rabbit, where at any moment he's just gonna pull his cartoon eyeballs out, and you're like, yo, this guy's wild. So I do think like giving the power structure around him, and it makes sense. Like, hey, I don't want to go anywhere near you. You're crazy. Like it helps the world make sense in letting us have a villain who's so weird.
And he's great. Neil Sandilands, I had forgotten what a silhouette he cuts with like that beard and the red glasses and everything. Oh, yeah. He's just a Jeff Lemire drawing come to life on screen, and it's so cool to see. So good stuff. Anything else we want to call out about the episode before we move on here?
Pete, you've gone strangely silent as the candy bar becomes
Butterfinger.
All right, let's do it. We've talked about the episode. Good job, Jim Nickel. I really like this one. Why don't we hold on a second? So we're going to talk about Butterfinger here. We're going to unwrap our Butterfingers. We're going to review them. I went to the gas station on the corner because they didn't have
Oh,
any
here we
wells
go.
in the number.
The gas station saga continues.
This is a artisanal
No.
vanilla flit. No, I'm kidding. They
No.
only had
Jesus.
regular. I actually tried. I looked for one just for a bit for the show, but they only had regular Butterfinger.
Mine's all banged up. It was in my
Pete
pocket
already
for a
ate
couple
his
days.
wrapper and all. So
Yeah.
so here we go. Wait, do we usually talk about impressions about Butterfinger before we try it, or?
I do a Butterfinger impression where I'm like, I'm nutty and
Nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger.
famously Bart Simpson spokesman. I
Nope.
don't like peanut butter and chocolate really mixed. So this has never been my candy bar. And
Right,
I
we must have yelled at you for Reese's peanut butter cups then.
I do like Reese's Pieces.
Yeah, let's
but
get that crunch, bro. Get that crunch going.
I do like these. The flavor's good. The thing I don't love about Butterfingers is it tastes like eating sand. It's so dusty.
What are you talking about?
It's
I don't know if it's like
very
eating
dry.
sand.
Like
It's-
flavor, like sand you like.
So this is
Flavor
this is one of my
Sand you
favorites.
like.
I feel like a Halloween time, if there's a Butterfinger, those are usually going first. Honestly, and it's a weird candy bar because it's so, like you're saying, like it's like these sticks in the middle. It's like eating chocolate covered peanut butter sticks or something.
So
I don't,
intense.
I don't know
So
how
it's
they
like-
do that texture or anything like that.
It's like wet dust.
Yeah, you know what I never noticed before because I usually only have the fun size. At least this one, it looks like there's a core of peanut butter between the peanut butter sticks or whatever's going on. Do you guys have that as well?
Mine's too like bent up and broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like some wet peanut butter in the middle.
It almost it's like if they took peanut brittle and were like, hey, this is too hard for normal people to eat.
Didn't you
'Cause
guys?
I think peanut brittle is only eaten by people with like World War II strength. Like the greatest generation are the only
You already got to
people-
have the wooden teeth.
Wait.
into
Did you guys
peanut
have Chico sticks? Did you eat Chico sticks?
That's like a plant, right? It's like a sweet.
No,
Is
it
that
has
chicken?
a-
Is that chicken sticks? Chicken covered?
It's
No,
chicken
but-
bones. You're talking about chicken bones.
Yeah, it's a chicken bone.
It has a
dip it in
crunchy
chocolate.
peanut butter in the center, similar to this. That's why I'm talking about it, because it has this layered peanut butter crunchiness to it.
Is that
Is
a
it-
local
I'm-
Rochester candy bar?
No, it is all over the
You
world.
dip
bro.
it in some mac and a little hot sauce.
Don't get me
Put a
started.
red hot
on
in
it,
the middle.
mate. Oh, come on.
Garbage Chico stick.
Wait,
Back
which is
to the
better then?
Butterfinger, though. Back to the Butterfinger, though. I love just how crunchy, because normally you get like a soft nougat, and that's a great way to kind of start your day.
Yeah.
But the
Start your day.
crunchiness, the crunchiness.
Brush your teeth with a candy bar.
Oh man, come on. The crunchiness is just so delightful, and I
You
agree
just
with
pour
Alex.
yourself a big cup of that.
This is like a must on Halloween. You got to have a Butterfinger on Halloween.
See, I'm a Mr. Goodbar Halloween man. And of course, there's Snickers. I will say I like this better than I thought I would. How about this, though? I'm not going to eat the rest of that. I've had half of it, and that's good enough for me. Good enough for Daddy.
It's a lot. It's definitely a lot with the peanut butter and everything. I will say the thing that I always forget about it, or at least doesn't affect you when you have a fun size, because you're like, pop it in your mouth and you're done, and then you move on to another piece of candy or something. It definitely sticks in your teeth
Yeah,
at the end, which I don't love. That's going to be there for a while.
like peanut brittle.
Like peanut brittle, but it's very tasty. And I know I was joking before about the going to the gas station and getting a variant of it, but Butterfinger is one of those candy bars that's like, nope, that's all we do. We're just
Yeah.
Butterfingers, no variation whatsoever.
No mess with it. Well, this is a good time to talk about like candy bars in general. We don't get a lot of like
Still
new.
eating mine.
I know. Like, be yourself, King. Candy bar king. We don't get a lot of like new ideas for candy bars. Like all these candy bars have been around for like 70 years. Like this started as like some hard like peanut butter rock that then they've like softened and changed a little bit, but it has an old timey core to it. This
Oh, it's
Butterfinger.
100% definitely somebody who's like, oh, you got a snake bite on your leg? Have a Butterfinger. That'll cure that up right quick.
And let me also throw out that the name Butterfinger, the finger, I don't appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's like
That-
you want to enjoy
that is
this.
one of
It's
the
like
things
eating
that
a
I think-
hand.
It's one of the things that I think works against it because you don't automatically think of peanut butter when you think of butter right at the top. You're like, oh, this is
Definitely.
like fingers made out of butter. That's pretty gross. And then their whole new ad campaign they do, where they try to create this character called Robin Fingers who's stealing your Butterfingers. That's not neither.
Well, I also think it's strange that so much of Butterfinger's marketing strategy is like there's an underbelly of thievery happening with Butterfinger. Why is there so much?
It does not matter what they call it.
bars?
This is delicious. This could be called herpes burger, and I would still eat it because it is. This is an absolutely delicious piece of candy. Fuck you for smudging its name. This is glorious.
I understand in essence your point, but I'll tell you what, if it was named Herpes Burger, I don't think I'd eat it.
But honestly, that sounds like an old-timey candy bar. Like, oh, you'll love this. It's called a herpes burger. It's chocolate and strawberries or something.
Chocolate.
They're like, my grandmother made the best herpes burgers. Like,
Back in the 1910s when we didn't know what words meant.
yeah, right.
Well, anyway, how do we think? I mean, obviously, this is the first volley in the 2023 Syrup Cup, but we feeling pretty good about this one so far, I think.
Yes.
Yes, I was pleasantly surprised by this. It made me want to eat a peanut butter cookie.
I can see that.
Soft.
Yeah, with like some chocolate chips in it or something like that.
No. See, that's where you're getting crazy.
No, like one big chocolate chip. You know what I mean? Like big ones in the middle.
Oh, and by the way, this is the part of the podcast where Pete has the candy crazies. Like he's like the cookie crook from Cookie Crisp commercials. Or his eyes are spinning candy bars.
now, man.
He's very high. He'll say anything. We're gonna close this podcast with absolute nonsense every time because Pete loses it.
Oh man.
Well, there we go. We got the first candy. We got the first
10 out of
episode
10.
of Sweet Tooth. Thank you all for tuning in. We're going to be here all season long and talking about all the episodes. If you'd like to support this podcast and all the podcasts we do, patreon.com/Comic Book Club. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Facebook and YouTube. Come hang out. We would love to talk to you about Sweet Tooth or candy. Pete would probably prefer to talk about candy, but either way.
Please talk to me about candy.
Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe and listen and follow the show at Comic Book Live on Twitter, Comic Book Club Live on TikTok and Instagram, comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, the Candymen can.
May your week be filled with 26 bees.
I like that get stuck in your teeth. You can keep tasting it.
Gross.